We're live. Hey, strangled in this knot of sin. I'm Jack Mangan in an Iron Maiden t-shirt. I'm rocking actually a Diamond Head baseball cap today, and I'm tired today, so bear with me. I'm going to do my best because I have to actually think this time. I can't just shut up and ask good questions. I have to think. But I'll shut up for now and turn it over to
your co-host, Rich Catino.
My cohort.
What's the topic? You told me the topic. What are we talking about? What is the topic of this?
We're talking about the greatness of the Backstreet Boys. And no, I'm kidding. We're talking about
the other. We didn't title it the other Big Four. What'd you call it?
Thrash beyond the Big Four.
That's cool. I dig that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I like that. I like that.
So thank you for watching. Yeah, that's Rich and I are going to talk about thrash is a huge genre, but it's always been kind of considered as a subgenre. It is a metal subgenre, but it's also huge. Some of the biggest bands in the world come from this genre and call it home. But so we're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about,
and we're specifically focusing on the '80s ones.
Sure. I mean, we'll give some lip service to some bands who came later, but yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about. We're not going to go into. I mean, there are places you can get the in-depth history of the genre, where it came from, the best bands of the genre, et cetera, et cetera. Right. The Big Four, we can't not mention the Big Four, but this is not about them. You do know them. This is kind of helping you to learn. If you're interested in this genre, we're going to talk to you about where to go next. So I'm going to shut up a little bit. Rich is going to talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to tag some folks and link it up.
I think the poster that we shared to advertise this talk was pretty cool because it has the Big Four in there, but then you have the other ones who are considered other big names as well. Like they work their way kind of down almost in the way the logos go. You know? Did you notice that?
Yeah. It was well done. I don't know. Did you do that? Who gets credit for that?
I don't know who gets credit for that, but it's very well done because you have your Anthrax and do I see Metallica here? Did they miss Metallica on purpose?
Interesting.
Or am I not?
I'm not
seeing it. Oh no, they're there. I'm sorry. I'm too low. So the top row, they got Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, Anthrax, and then of course you got Kreator, Megadeth, Testament, Sodom, then Overkill, Death Angel, Destruction, Nuclear Assault. So like those were the big names from the genre in the '80s.
Yeah, and yeah, there are others. So you out there, you thrash enthusiasts, don't give us crap because we actually let's do that disclaimer right now, Rich. Forget about the poster.
What? Yeah.
Rich and I are going to rattle off a bunch of names. We're probably going to miss a band that you know. So feel free to chime in the comments if we don't get to them. But yeah, don't give us crap. We're doing our best. And
but I think, like I said, this is good because you can see that the top row, the first two rows, first three rows, you're really getting all the big names right there that everybody knows, pretty much. The ones that run MTV a lot, and the biggest sellers, pretty much. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then you have like the ones that came later, like Annihilator, because Alice in Hell came in like 89, I think, somewhere around there, 88, 89. So they were a little late.
Right.
But still great. And then you have, Violence, and you have who else is in here? They put Evildead is in there, Heathen, who you're a big fan of, right?
Heathen, yes. Breaking the Silence.
Dark Angel, who came a little bit later too,
Yeah, definitely a big name. Yeah.
Flotsam and Jetsam, whose first two big albums were really big, very important.
Right, who unfortunately are most famous for the member who left, but they're worthy of respect in their own right, regardless of
course.
Because Jason, if you don't know, Jason Newsted was in Flotsam and Jetsam. He famously left Flotsam and Jetsam to join Metallica after, the world lost Cliff Burton. If you didn't know that, so let's talk a little bit about. So let's pay a little bit of lip service to the Big Four so we can move on. I mean, the Big Four did a tour. They're obvious. They did a tour recognizing that they were the Big Four. Obviously, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. There's no dispute. I know actually there was some disputing. Apparently. Even Kerry King was talking smack about who should really be in the Big Four, but I feel like that's universally acknowledged. Like who? Actually, I think he was saying Machine Head should have been in there, as I recall.
In the Big Four?
The big four for thrash. Yeah,
That's like
those are,
90s. That's way after the fact. What are they talking about?
well, like, I'm not going to try and get into it where he was coming from. Maybe we'll have Kerry King, if you're out there, feel free to join us and talk about who you feel should be in the big four.
Maybe
But
Machine Head should be, part of a 90s conversation, but not 80s thrash.
Yeah, well, I mean, thrash is thrash. I mean, thrash did. That's something we should touch on before we're done. Thrash did go underground for a little while. It never went away. Obviously, no valid musical genre is going to disappear. But hey, Stephen DeGroot from Ogden, Utah. Good to see you, man.
Cool.
We obviously thrash went away for a little while, but it's really coming back. And I will call out Dust Bolt and Evil Invaders. They're two. There are other bands. Those are the two that immediately come to mind who are really carrying the torch to bring it back.
Havoc.
Well, and Evildead. Evildead have a brand new killer album, by the way, for one of the top thrash albums of 2020, easily.
Right. There's
thrash.
a whole crop of. I got to find some of the names now. I got to look them up real quick. But there's a whole crop of new wave of thrash, classic, 80s style thrash metal that are really killing it out there.
Well, I'm gonna say it. Actually, I think Hellstar in this past decade really worked to bring it back. I think they were part of the cutting edge that brought it back. I said it never went away, but James Rivera. I mean, we had him on. It's just a killer band, great sound, and they stayed true to the roots of thrash.
But I'll say you got to admit though, Hellstar were never really a thrash band when they started out. Though they were more kind of traditional heavy metal with a little bit of speed metal thrown in there, right?
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree, actually. Yeah, the first couple albums. I mean, if people someone classified those original albums as thrash, I wouldn't say no, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. They evolved more into thrash as they went on with their albums.
Yeah, no, that's a fair statement. Actually, let's straighten this out, because one of the big four, their tagline, Megadeth, their tagline was the world's first state-of-the-art speed metal band. So, Rich, why don't you tell the world what's the difference between speed metal and thrash?
What's the difference between speed metal and thrash? There's so many similarities. It's really hard to, like, when I think of speed metal, I think of Exciter, Razor, Anvil, maybe even Moments of Metal Church, their songs, some of them, see, I don't know, these are two bands that you like. I don't know, what would you categorize them as? Are they more speed metal or thrash? Heathen and Agent Steel.
I think that's straight up thrash to me.
Both of them? Yeah. Both of them. Yeah, I would say both of them are, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to take us, because we're old guys, I'll talk a little bit. I remember when Halloween was called speed metal. Now we call them power.
Well, they were. Yeah. The first album is a little more speed metal, but it crosses the line into the anthemic power metal, because power metal has the speed of speed metal, but it's not as it's much more melodic and singable, and it's got the anthems, and it's got those anthems, and it's a little bit different topically. But speed metal is definitely different. Like Exciter's Violence and Force, that's a speed metal classic.
Yeah. Exciter.
You could even call it a thrash metal album too,
Yeah. No, I think that's a great answer. And of course, people call Motorhead. I love it, Lisa Ann. Actually, by the way, I'll read a little stuff. Actually, I'm going to put it up. But people call Motorhead the founding fathers of speed metal. Motorhead is not a thrash band. Motorhead,
right? I would say definitely, because Motorhead is not as, they don't have as much of the tempo changes and the complexity as Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and Overkill and those kind of bands,
Yeah.
I think thrash takes it to a little bit more of a complexity and more tempo changes and grooves, as opposed to speed metal, which is a little more straightforward.
This is why Rich is a professor, you guys. I want to touch on Lisa Ann's. I want to touch on Lisa's comment here.
What is it?
It says big four for thrash: Possessed, Megadeth, Exodus. 4. But I'm mainly excited about the Possessed reference, because I was going to bring up Possessed, and I thought I was going to get slammed for it, because everyone says no, they're death metal.
Possessed are great, but Possessed have more connection to this band, I think. Witchery.
Sure.
So you have you have that kind of speed metal thrash hybrid with the black metal vocal. It's a little different.
Yeah, or black, black metal, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, again, I know people get very nitpicky about what is what, but to me, the possessed riff, the riffage, is just right out of Thrash's wheelhouse.
It is, but if you listen to it, also you listen to Seven Churches and what's the second one? Beyond the Gates, I think.
Beyond the Gates, and actually, mine was the Eyes of Horror, the EP. That was
the Eyes of Horror. Yes, that too. But that was a little more varied though, because you had Joe Satriani that worked on it. Remember?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, Joe Satriani. The ultimate in thrash is Joe Satriani.
But like I said, I think definitely Possessed goes into the blackened, I guess you could say, thrash metal, or the beginnings of what would be that that sound. A little bit of that and a little bit of death metal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And but again, that is a great band, and I will defend Possessed. I'll defend their music and their singer. Shit, don't blast me. I'm spacing on his name. I apologize. My brain is I'm completely straight. My brain is just tired today. But yeah, the guy is a legend, and what the guy has lived through, even away from the mic. The fact that he rolls out every night on a wheelchair. I mean, that dude is metal as fuck. So
their latest album from about a year ago is very good too. Very traditional Possessed.
Yeah, Revelations of Oblivion is unbelievably good. It's the more I listen to it, I've been listening to it a lot in 2020, even though it came out last year. It's just a wonderful, wonderful album. So Rich, I'm go ahead and say your thing. I want to talk a little bit about just what thrash is all about.
Well, I think did we establish the difference what's between thrash and speed metal? Speed metal is maybe a little more straightforward, not as complex. Thrash has a little more of the tempo changes and grooves and the kind of the pit type of anthems.
Yeah.
And I think speed metal is a little more just straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I like bringing Motorhead into it because I don't disagree that Motorhead are the founding fathers of that. But again, I wouldn't say, especially later in the career. You see our comment. You see our comment from Lisanne Albano about Dimmu. I know we're both Dimmu fans, but I know that you're. This is again. I'm going to turn it over to the professor. We're both Dimmu fans, but you're the man with this band. So
they're pure black metal. They're pure black metal, especially their first few albums up to Puritanical, Euphoric Misanthropia. Then after that, they started getting a little more symphonic black metal. But that's definitely a black metal band, and they're excellent.
Yeah, great band. And yeah, I was going to say they're a little bit more orchestral. Thrash generally. I mean, I'm going to say some things which, of course, you can point out exceptions. Rich, I can point out exceptions, but I'm just going to make some ground rules. I mean, thrash is generally guitars, bass, vocals, and drums. You generally got some sometimes blast beats. Definitely got double kick drums going.
Right.
That's generally it. I mean, you will sometimes get other instruments in there, but it's rare. There's almost no thrash band.
It's very rare. It's so rare.
Right, or even like guest violin or something is very, very rare. It's typically there.
Exactly. Yep.
A lot of low string, and actually, since we're talking about the thrash era, this is before down tuning was like on it, where bands would down tune on every single song. I mean, Slayer would down tune a half step. That's fine, but we're not talking about like with Korn and Typo Negative, that kind of thing. We're talking about basically a lot of stuff in the E string, a lot of stuff hitting that tritone, that devil's note. The A sharp or B flat, depending on your perspective. There were a lot of riffs built around that. In fact, band we talk about a lot, Am I Evil is kind of one of the prototypical thrash songs, even though it's not a thrash band. Just because it's taking that riff right out of Holst's Mars, the Bringer of War. That is just such a thrash riff. It's just it kind of hits all the points, and especially
who really had those evil riffs too is the first couple Slayer albums.
Oh yeah, the first couple of Slayer albums. Well, I think Slayer were never not thrash. They got more closer to hardcore towards the end, but Slayer deserved to be called one of the big four.
Yeah, the early stuff is amazing. The stuff from Show No Mercy up to Seasons,
Yeah, I would agree.
Which I don't think which Show No Mercy had an anniversary today. Was released on this day in 1983.
Right, I mean, a song
So,
like Black Magic or
where's my Cheers to Show No Mercy? Great album.
Yeah. Rich is making me look bad with his red wine while I'm drinking water here. From a straw, no less.
Come on. You're not thrash right now, poser.
I'm gonna throw this at the screen.
Take that drink cup and throw it across the room or something. Do something aggressive. Right. What's wrong?
I'm too old for the pit, man. It's funny when we had Evildead on, we talked about it, and we all agreed, like, yeah, I'm not getting my face bloodied in a pit anymore. No, mad respect. I always look. I mean, whenever I'm at a show, obviously not this year. Whenever I'm at a show, I always watch the pit, and I'm always like, man, it would be so much fun to get back in there. But I just know better. I know I'm not.
I think after 2000. Yeah, I think after 2020, I think we're all going to jump in the pit when we can.
There you go. And then there's a comedian. I'm so spacey. I should have gotten better sleep. There's a comedian who talks about going to a Metallica show and all the old guys like trying to jump in the pit and being tired. Like after like 10 seconds, they're all just winded. They're all waiting for Seek and Destroy to come on. Jim Brewer. My apologies to Jim Brewer. I'm gonna space everybody's name today. But yeah, it's good stuff. Actually, I'll check it out. It's funny shit. But yeah, so I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to shut up a little bit, but like we said, Metallica, they just forged all kinds of paths. I know there's a lot of hate for Metallica now, whatever, and they've gone some weird routes in their careers, but those first 4 albums are just thrash to the bone, and they're brilliant albums. I mean, they deserve all the praise and love they get to this day. And yes, the same is true of Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. I mean, those early Anthrax albums. I mean, actually, I love Anthrax's whole career, but I mean, those early albums, Spreading the Disease was just such a huge deal for me.
Spreading and Among would be 2 Desert Island albums for me, of course.
And as Rich and I have talked about this offline. As much as those albums are important to me, my personal favorite is Persistence of Time. It's just perfect riffage and Anthrax at their best.
Did you get the reissue, or are you going to ask Santa Claus for that? It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, there have been some good reissues this year in 2020.
Yeah.
But so then, but the whole point of this, we're talking about thrash beyond the big 4. So there were so many great bands, and I don't want to say bands. Sure, some of these bands followed in the wake of the big 4, kind of blazing the trail. But there's a lot of great bands who grew up with them, who would have existed even if the big 4 didn't. So I'm going to turn it over. I have a whole list, but I'm going to turn it over to Rich.
Obviously, the obvious 3. Obviously, Exodus are next in line. Right? When did this come out? I think 85, I want to say.
Most people. See, I said I can't shut up. I got to mute myself. But yeah, most people call Exodus number 5 out of the big 5.
I think this is 1985, right? If I'm correct.
85 or 84. I can hit Wikipedia. Yeah. And you're right.
Then
that album
obviously, even before I'm going to say the next band, these guys should definitely be number 2. The second choice, Overkill, because this came out in 85. So did and this was 86, I think, or 87. Taking Over.
Taking Over was 86. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was 85, and then they had the Power in Black EP, which came out before this. So Overkill's been out there doing it around the same time as Slayer and Metallica and Anthrax when they started.
New Jersey-based band, by the way. We can't end this before talking about John Zazula and New Jersey and the Old Bridge Militia. But yeah, you know me. Overkill is maybe in the top 2. Let's forget about the big.
Same thing with me. Same thing with me. Absolutely. And then, of course, the Mighty Testament. I mean, these 2 first albums, forget about it. Incredible. Right?
And you can't leave out Practice What You Preach. I mean, that's
a good one too. But these two are really the gems, I think. Practice got, it's still great. It's very melodic. It's very much, I don't know. It's kind of like their Master of Puppets, I would say.
Yeah.
Right. These are a little more like a Ride the Lightning and a Kill 'Em All.
Agreed. And actually, right, if you want to talk about just definitive thrash, you're right. They started to branch out a little bit. Those 2 albums are, again, thrash to the core. I mean, Trial by Fire might be the most thrash song ever recorded.
Yeah, this is probably still my favorite Testament album because I love the dynamics in this, the variety.
Into the Pit, the title track, Disciples of the Watch. It's just that song.
Eerie Inhabitants, I've always loved.
Yes, yeah, you know that. Yes, I haven't listened to that song in forever, but yeah, that's a solid album.
I don't know if this came through your neck of the woods, but they did these two albums in their entirety a few years ago. Did you get to see that?
I did not get to see that. That is that's impressive.
It was mind blowing.
Also, incredible. Much respect to Testament for, again, we talk about singers who survived. You know, Chuck Billy came back from throat cancer, and you know they tuned their stuff down. He still sounds amazing today, now, today in 2020. He sounds amazing.
And their last 4 albums have been great too. So they're just not a band that has great music from the past. Their new music is as good as their past. Absolutely.
All right, Riz, I'm going to cut you off again, and then I'm going to mute myself because I keep talking over you.
That's cool.
Go
ahead.
Lisa Ann Albano is in my head. She keeps bringing up these. Death Angel, Nuclear Assault, again. Great.
Death Angel. Yeah.
The Ultraviolence is just the ultimate thrash riff.
It's pretty. That record's pretty brutal. I just pulled out this one because I like the variety in this one.
That's my favorite Death Angel record. It is.
Yeah.
I know people gave him shit about it, but I love it. I think it's great.
No, I think that it was needed because the Ultraviolence and Frolic Through the Park were, kind of similar to what was happening at the time, I think. But I think this set them apart. This has set them apart from everybody else.
Yeah, agree. I mean, A Room with a View is a great song. Fight me. You know, I'll. That's the kind of pit I can jump in at my age now.
Well,
jump in the pit
I think we established that the other 3 of the other 4 would be Overkill, right? Exodus and Testament, right? The other big 4.
All right, and Rich, remember that we're old now. Remember this. So for the kids out there, I'm going to ask you this, and then I'm going to shut up and let you give your answers. Take your time with it. For the kids out there who don't buy albums, what are the songs they need to listen to from those bands for their intro?
The ones I just showed.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've got thousands of other bands to get to, but out of the ones you just showed, what are the songs that people need to listen to?
Well, definitely from Bonded by Blood, the title track. That's just incredible, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And Piranha is very fun and catchy. I always love that one. Yeah.
Yes, I sing it all the time around my kids.
I always love Piranha. I got to put my reading glasses because the type is too small. The song Exodus, the song Exodus is awesome. But really, I mean, you can't go wrong with this. Deliver Us to Evil, Strike of the Beast, A Lesson in Violence. This whole album is really flawless front to back. Right?
I am I'm trying not to stuff. I'm also going to throw out from Exodus, Parasite, Deranged, just for the opening. I mean, I like Salad. And then of course their big famous song is a good thrash song. Toxic Waltz is good.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good fun one.
Yeah, Fabulous Disaster is actually a very good underrated song. The title track from that record is very underrated. They did an excellent. Well, they did a ridiculous but laughably good cover of Low Rider. But they did.
I never liked that. I never liked that cover.
No, I know. I'm not going to defend it, but it's fun. But they also did a Free for All. They legitimately did a killer version of Ted Nugent's Free for All.
What album was that on?
I think that was a B-side somewhere. I don't actually know. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't remember where Free for All was, but I can still hear it in my head. And then, all right. So Testament. What are the vital? I think we already named some. What are the vital songs from Testament?
All right. Well, got to start with the debut, obviously. Over the Wall is a classic. I really like The Haunting. Very melodic.
Interesting. Yeah.
I love Alone in the Dark, even though it's not as thrashy either. But that opening, the riff, right? The leads.
It's the same riff as Rotten to the Core, by the way. But anyway.
Is it? All right. Apocalyptic City is killer.
Yes.
Another one, and Burnt Offerings. Another classic.
Yes. I love it.
I would say those are the major ones to hit off of this one. Right?
All right.
And then, let's see, The New Order. Well, The New Order itself The way that builds and then it kicks in, right? How cool is that?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I didn't mention that one. That's a good song.
You mentioned Trial by Fire. I love how it opens up mellow and slow, and then it kicks into that groove, right? This I really like this one better than the first one because this is where they incorporated their melodies, right? With the thrash, they really did a great job on this one. Don't you think?
I prefer Legacy, but it's not a diss on the New Order.
Okay. Of course, Into the Pit. That's the classic off of this one. Disciples of the Watch you mentioned, and the Preacher too. That comes in and out of the set a lot as well. That's another classic.
Hypnosis is good for you guitar geeks.
Yeah. Right? Well, it's interesting. The album actually opens and closes with an instrumental, like before Eerie Inhabitants kicks in, right? Doesn't it start out just like with an instrumental, short one? And then it closes with Musical Death. That's the closer, which is also an instrumental.
Well, you got Alex Skolnick. I mean, you know, and actually, that's not to No Short Shrift. Testament are very underrated. You know, their skill as players is underrated. I'll just rattle off.
I don't think they're underrated. I think people totally appreciate them for their talent.
Well, I guess I meant the rest of the guys. You know, people. Alex Skolnick. Okay. So I'm just going to rattle off. We don't need to. Cause actually, my list isn't that different from yours. I'd say Trial by Fire, Practice What You Preach is a killer song. Killer song. Disciples of the Watch.
It's a concert anthem for them.
Yeah, it's just greatness. It is truly great. Burnt Offerings, you said, not really thrash, but the ballad is still a good song. And even later in their career, Souls of Black, One Man's Fate, very cool deep cut, and from the New Days, Formation of Damnation is probably my favorite modern era Testament song.
Oh, cool.
So, and then who else? We said, all right.
Of course, our favorite. Our favorite, Overkill.
All right, how much time do you got?
Let's start with the first album, Feel the Fire. Right?
Track 1 through 8. All right, next album? No, I'm kidding.
Just everything, right? Well, actually, there's actually 2 on here that I'm not the biggest fan of. But after they did the anniversary of this, when they played the whole album, and then they did Horoscope, you know that show in Germany?
Yeah.
I got a new appreciation for the songs on this album when I heard them live again. But I never thought Kill a Command or There Is No Tomorrow were all that good. The rest of the songs I thought were great.
I liked the ending of Kill a Command as a kid, you know, when I listened to it. Yeah, I'd agree. They haven't... There's No Tomorrow is kind of like... It's almost like a punk song.
Yeah. But Raise the Dead, of course, Rotten to the Core is the big hit. Hammerhead is killer. Always love that. Feel the Fire is very cool. It's got that Maiden gallop to it. Right? And then I always liked Blood and Iron, and I got to see them do that once. I forgot what tour it was. It was one of the more recent tours for the recent albums, and they played it. It was killer.
Yeah, I saw that recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we move on to the second one, or you want to mention anything about Feel the Fire first?
Yeah, actually, so I'll just rattle. I won't go as in depth on the songs, but you kids out there, if you're curious about Overkill, yeah, as Rich said, Rotten to the Core is a fun banger. The title track, Feel the Fire, is probably one of my favorite songs of all time. It is just, it is a great, great song. And Rich is right. Hammerhead is a killer. You're a fucking hammerhead. And then the song Overkill is one of the coolest evil metal songs of all time.
Right. One of 4 parts.
5. Remember, they did a 5th.
That's right, on Immortalis.
Yeah. Actually, let's take. I mean, well, all right. So go ahead and why don't you finish up with Overkill songs? There's something we didn't touch on about thrash. Is you know, kind of the where they go lyrically.
We got a couple comments there too. So you want to talk about them afterwards?
Yeah, we've gotten to a lot. You know, again, Lisa Ann has been rattling off a lot of great stuff. There's no way we're going to get to all this great stuff. But
that's all right. Maybe we'll do this in 2 parts.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So this is our favorite.
Yes.
Still, if you remember, of course you remember, we used to jam when we used to play in Mango. You remember?
Yes.
We used to play all the time Power Surge and Electro Violence and the opening riff to Deny the Cross every time in rehearsal before we would play music that's completely opposite thrash metal.
There's yeah, right. Matt Mango is a wonderful musician. Rich and I used to play with, but he's more like Lenny Kravitz and U2. It does great
and
songs.
we would loosen up to playing metal riffs before we would play their music. It was actually great. It was very fun. But Denied Across, Wrecking Crew's the big hit off of this, right?
That's probably my least favorite song off the album, and I love it. There's not a bad note on this album.
No, there's not. WSOU used to play this all the time. Seton Hall's Pirate Radio. Wrecking Crew is always played. Fatal as Swallowed is very cool. I think that's a deep cut that people don't know. And I've never heard them play it live.
Right.
But the second half, I guess this would be side B, I think is the best. The whole album I still enjoy. But you got Power Surge, and Union We Stand, Electro Violence, and Overkill Part 2. Just killer. Killer.
Personal thrill for me when we had Bobby Blitz on this very show, and I was able to tell him, you know what, side 2 of that Overkill Taking Over cassette, I would rewind it almost every day. I listened to the first side too. I would rewind it almost every day. I go from Power Surge and Union We Stand, Electro Violence. It's just the perfect album side. I love all, that's as good as it gets.
The only thing that's interesting about this and the first one is this is before Dee Dee had that distinctive bass sound.
Right, but it's still him. It's still he has the same attack. Like I love the moment in Power Surge when the song just comes in like a tornado and then everything drops out but the bass. That is Dee Dee Verney. There's no mistaking who's playing right there. But you're right, his bass doesn't have that like low end of the piano kind of string sound to it.
Okay. Should we move on, or you want to say anything else about Taking Over?
Oh yeah, how much time you get? No. Let's move on. We got a lot more to cover.
I know. So we'll throw in a couple from Under the Influence, which has probably my favorite Overkill album cover. I love this.
Yeah, that's a great one.
But it's a whole story in itself, right?
Yeah, no, it's great artwork.
Very cool. And Shred, the big hit, the big MTV hit, "Hello from the Gutter."
Yeah, right. Which is all right. It's all right.
Yeah, it's cool. Shred it shreds. Opens up the album, killer, right? Totally shreds. And I always dug Brain Fade and Head First. Oops, sorry. Brain Fade and Head First?
Yeah. What the hell have you guys done with all the towels?
Two of my favorites from this album.
Rich and I actually disagree a little bit on this album because I really think love the slow chunk of Drunken Wisdom. I think, and then it comes to the fast part. I think that's a good underappreciated song. It's got the arpeggios in the beginning. I think that's a good, just slow, muddy song that then it opens up and it's a good pit song. And then of course Overkill 3.
Never liked Drunken Wisdom.
Yeah, I dig it. And then Overkill 3 is
Overkill 3 is great too. Very epic.
Yeah, it's a worthy third edition in that storyline. Mm-hmm. But their big album was yet to come. I mean, like I said, Taking Over is my personal favorite, but arguably their biggest or their game changer was yet to come.
This one?
Yeah. Wow.
Another killer album cover. I love this cover.
Yeah.
Like that's a statement. That's a statement in itself, right?
Right. Yeah, it clearly inspired Avenged Sevenfold. Because they have the same mascot.
Those clowns.
But Elimination
yes, was the hit off of this. And Time to Kill, which I got to hear them do that once.
I'm pretty sure I did too.
Great opener. That's a great opener. I Hate was in the set a couple times. I've seen that. Birth of Tension, I don't think I ever heard live, but that's a great one. That's from side 2. And I think Who Tends the Fire and the title track are excellent. They're not thrashy, but they're really melodic with great hooks and great like peaks and valleys in them, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Years of Decay was their first real foray into messing around with ballads. And I got the impression that Blitz himself isn't that crazy about the Overkill ballads, but I think that's a great song.
It is one of my favorites. Of course, the album closes with Evil Never Dies, the fourth part to the Overkill saga. which is also excellent.
Yeah, that was a brilliant way to kind of, they eventually did a part 5 many years later, but they said we're ending the saga here with this song, and it kind of broke the rules. So the first 3 all had a similar sound, and then Evil Never Dies is just a complete, it goes at breakneck speed. It's just such it wrecks everything.
But then the middle section kind of flattens out a little bit, and then it builds up again, and then it crushes you again.
Yeah, it's greatness. But of course, we didn't touch on what to me is my favorite track on the album, and one of my favorite Overkill tracks is a Skull Crusher, which they did a few years ago, which is just again so Sabbathy, so doomy. You can hear the roots of Bronx Casket Company in that song because you can tell that it's not the stretch that Dee Dee's involved with, because that song is just, it's also lyrically Blitz at his most brilliant. It's just literally, it is truly brilliant lyrics.
I haven't listened to it in a while or paid attention to the lyrics, but I saw that tour. Why is it called Playing with Spiders Skull Crusher? Do you know?
Well, Playing with Spiders is the opening little instrumental thing. It's almost like a separate song, and it's Bobby Gustafson's little opening guitar thingy that he does that fades out and then leads into Skull Crusher. Which the song.
Does the Playing with Spiders have anything to do with the Skull Crusher? Do you know? I never really paid attention to that detail.
Yeah, I don't think it's connected. I mean, we should ask the experts.
Just sounds cool.
Yeah, I think it just sounds cool. Yeah, I think Playing with Spiders just sounded cool. But so let's before we move on and talk about other bands, I want to talk about some of the tenets of thrash. The lyrics tend to be either social commentary.
Right.
There's 3. Again, there are exceptions to this, but I'm going to just make a rule. There are 3 kinds of thrash lyrics. There's social commentary. There's demonic shit. And then there's just kind of just goofiness, like what band Rich is going to bring up, Atrophy. I always think of their song Beer Bong. Like there's a lot of that in thrash.
Atrophy. But no, you're missing one. You're missing one. Political and war. That's big in thrash.
Well, I guess you're right. I in my head I was lumping them together, but you're right. I mean that's a big deal. There's a social commentary, and it's always done with a very biting, cynical sense of humor. There's nothing like, we're all going to pull through this together. And actually, I should say this sometimes, like in Union We Stand, there's stuff about like we're unity of our community together, standing together.
Yeah.
But it's funny that, so thrash gets this reputation of being boneheads, and meatheads, but there is some depth there. But then you look at the album cover, you look at the back, and you look at the band picture, and you see 4 guys making the most ridiculous faces with like beer,
usually killer art leads to killer metal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Annihilator, yeah. So anyway,
what a great debut that is.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that had they not been Canadian, had they been here in the States, they probably would have been a bigger band. And that's not to say Canadians can't get huge. I mean, Celine Dion, we got huge.
It just took those few of those bands a little while to get here when everybody else was already here.
Right. Yeah. No offense, Metal Voice guys.
That debut, Alice in Hell and Never Neverland and Set the World on Fire are 3 classics.
Well, and if you have not heard, for you kids out there, you damn kids, if you have not heard Ballistic Sadistic, one of the albums of the year, one of the best albums of the year.
That's a new album.
Annihilator.
Keep talking. I got to get a couple other CDs for show and tell. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, Annihilator are still kicking around. All right, he's finally gone. We can talk about him. So that fucking Rich guy. No, I'm kidding. So so that is a big thing about thrash. As I said, it's always funny to me that you might say to someone like, hey, you should really listen to Nuclear Assault. They actually have some really smart things to say about the world, about the social situation. And people say, oh, you mean like in the song Butt Fuck? Like there's thrash has these kind of elements, and they go across all these areas. But trust me, and I think Lisa, and you brought them up earlier, Nuclear Assault is a band that you cannot neglect mentioning. Nuclear Assault, Dan Lilker, one of the unsung heroes on bass in the thrash world. And speaking of him, some of the greatest thrash riffs of all time came from SOD, Stormtroopers of Death. You cannot, even though a lot of people would call them punk band, you cannot dismiss Stormtroopers of Death. And those riffs, he's back. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, Stormtroopers of Death. Let's talk about SOD for a second, Rich, because we can get away with it because even though you've got Element, you got two guys from the Big Four, you got one of the best drummers of all time. You got I'm going to say it. He's probably the single best rhythm guitar player of all time. I know James Hetfield is worthy of all the praise he gets. Scott Ian is probably the best, maybe only in metal or maybe across the board. His rhythm guitar elevates anything he's on. And I'll give a quick example is if you listen to the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny demo 2020 from Mr. Bungle, he's on, I know, it's a mouthful.
Wait,
Scott
what's
Ian,
the title?
Just really quickly, Mr. Bungle, you know Mr. Bungle, that was Mike Patton's first band before Faith No More. They re-released their demo, The Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny, this year.
I love that title. I haven't even heard it, and I love it just by the title.
You would like, I don't know how much you would like Mr. Bungle, Rich, but you would like this,
I'm familiar
especially.
With them.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, everybody knows him a little bit, but you would really like the new. I mean, it's got Dave Lombardo on drums. It's got the original Mr. Bungle members, including Mike Patton, and Scott Ian on rhythm guitar, who's doing his thing. So if you like thrash and you're interested, check out the new. It's very noisy. You'll have to deal with a lot of screaming and weird noises, and Mr. Bungle it's a trip. It's an experience. But all right, I'm going to shut up now that I've talked a lot. Rich, go ahead and tell us what you.
Before I go on to what I just pulled out of the archives, there's a couple comments for a couple bands. So what should we talk about? Should we mention anything from those bands?
Yeah, I mean, you can see the comments, right? Lisa Ann has been awesome. Lisa Ann,
I know, but there's been a few that already passed through, and I don't remember what they were talking about. They were mentioning, I think, Metal Church, right?
Well, you can't see them on the side.
No, I only see the current one.
All right, I'll rattle them off really quick. She said after Dimmu, she said Sabotage, Evil Has No Boundary, Slayer, Death Angel, Nuclear Assault, Lizzie Borden, LOL, Lizzie Borden. Actually, I love Lizzie Borden.
I love Lizzie Borden, but they're not thrash metal.
No, she said Vinnie Vincent Invasion.
Love Vinnie Vincent Invasion, but they're not thrash metal.
No.
Vinnie Vincent Invasion's awesome. When Vinnie Vincent, I know we're not going into this tangent, but when Vinnie Vincent wrote great songs and he wasn't worried about shredding over and over again, and he put a great melody into the song and to the solo, he made some great songs. So, all right, go on.
Yeah, well, let's not take that tangent. But yeah, good call out. Haunting the Chapel. She's bringing up some good Slayer songs. Metal Church. She says Metal Church, No Tomorrow, Killer Drums, which I want to touch back on that, but I've done a lot of talking.
Metal Church definitely has their thrash moments throughout their history. I don't know if they're really a thrash band, but maybe the first two albums could be kind of considered a little bit.
Yeah, even in the How years, but yeah, I think those first two albums. Metal Church is the titles and the band name song. The song Metal Church is great thrash, great drums. I love the drums, love the hi-hat in that song, and the riff is the simplest riff ever, but still brilliant song. All right, Rich, you got to talk. I've talked too much.
That's all right. Well, are there any other bands in the chat that we got to comment on? After Metal Church?
No,
I see Obsession there, but they're not thrash metal. Another cool band that maybe not too many people know about, but I wouldn't put them in thrash metal. They were kind of like an underground band. That was Mike Viscera's band, if you remember them. Do you remember those guys?
Actually, I will do my homework, Lisa and Rich. I will do my homework, and I'm probably the name is ringing a bell, so I'm sure I'm going to go hit YouTube and then go, oh yeah. But when
they had a couple cool albums in the '80s. They were more traditional heavy metal, though.
That's
all right. So we haven't talked about the German guys yet, the big three.
You're right. A band. I mean, and all right. Rich and I actually in our preamble a couple of days ago, we agreed that there's one that's the standout of the big three. And that's not to say that there are only three. There are more, right? But there's one who's a standout.
We said Overkill, Testament, Exodus would be three of them, and definitely Kreator would be the fourth to make your other big four. Right?
So what are Rich? Tell the fine folks at home, what are some Kreator albums, what are some Kreator songs that they need to hear?
Well, this is a great compilation because it puts a nice variety on here. But this has on it Pleasure to Kill, Endless Pain, Flag of Hate, People of the Lie. You remember that song?
I do, yeah. And Flag of Hate. Go
ahead.
I was just saying, Flag of Hate is one of One of my favorites of theirs.
Under the Guillotine, Terror Zone, Tormentor. This is a really cool compilation if you want to get a good starter from Kreator. But their first 4 albums from the 80s are classics. Do you remember those? Endless Pain, Pleasure to Kill, Terrible Uncertainty, Coma of Souls, right? Definite classics. But I think what makes them one of the other big 4, as opposed to the other 2, which I really enjoy too, Kreator had 2 guitar players all the time. So that added more dimension to their music, right?
I don't want to say the wrong thing and come off like an ass. I thought there was a time
where look it up, Wikipedia real quick, but I'm pretty sure they always had 2 guitar players.
I thought they were a trio in the beginning. But I'm going to say, I'm going to mention
and Destruction were a 3-piece.
Yeah. Okay.
But
maybe
if you want a good starting point for these 2 legends, definitely Agent Orange.
Yes.
Total classic, great production, great songs, great hooks, but very thrashy. This is probably their best produced album, I would say. Sounds incredible. And then these 2 are,
that was their peak. Yeah.
What's that?
Most of their fans feel like, the Agent Orange was their peak. That era, like they came out with like 3 albums like right in a row in like 3 years. And
this is great. Eternal Devastation, The Mad Butcher, and then the one before this too, Infernal Overkill, the album before this one. Another classic from Destruction, right? From the 80s.
Yeah. And that they're kind of very much prototype thrash. They're very much, what thrash is. And actually something about these 3 bands. Actually, I'll tell you a little backstory. I remember first hearing Kreator, and I was into thrash. I liked Slayer at the time when I first heard. I liked Slayer, loved Metallica, loved Overkill, and remember my initial reaction to Kreator was like, I don't know if this is too heavy for me or not. Of course, this is like 1985 or whatever. But because I mean, these are bands where the vocals are very raspy. I mean, the other bands there's it's either shouting or singing. These guys are a lot more guttural, a lot more raspy. But what won me over,
especially the earlier stuff.
Yeah. And then down the road you got At the Gates. I felt like we're definitely successors who picked up on that. I don't know if I'd call At the Gates thrash, but At the Gates picked up on that style of vocals. But
At the Gates were melodic death metal,
right? But it's those vocals definitely. The first time I heard At the Gates, I even thought, oh my gosh, is this Kreator, or is this another project? But a song you didn't mention, my favorite Kreator song is Awakening of the Gods. That's the song that made me, actually, I got to say, I heard that as another one. I heard the EP. I heard the Flag of Hate EP first. Flag of Hate, Take Their Lives, and Awakening of the Gods, and Tormentor. That's just the first 4 songs on that cassette. And I was just like, this is amazing. I said, I'm going to get over myself and appreciate how great this band is. So,
and if you remember when in the 80s when Destruction and Kreator and Sodom were around, they started putting out music. It wasn't too readily available in America like the other thrash bands, right?
Right.
Like the Americans, they were an import. But I mentioned that Destruction was a 3-piece, and they were for the majority of their career. But Release from Agony and The Mad Butcher, they were a 4-piece at that point with 2 guitar players. So I had to correct myself there. So they do have their moments in time where there are 2 guitar players in the band. Like the recent lineup, they have 2 guitar players as well.
Well, I mean, going back to our favorite, for years Overkill was Bobby Gustafson, but it's not that he wasn't like so fast that he could play rhythm and lead at the same time, and he was just doing overdubs in the studio. And then live, live, Dee was holding up the bottom end. Now, every Overkill lineup since has been 2 guitar players.
Right. Yeah. So are you familiar with Destruction and Sodom to recommend any songs on your end, or more of a Kreator fan?
Kreator to me is, and I like the other bands, but Kreator to me they're the king of those 2. But Sodom, their song Partisan, which is actually new, like this isn't classic old days Sodom, but Partisan is just them at their best. I also like Nuclear Winter. That's a good song. From Destruction, I mean, I'm probably gonna say everybody's Release from Agony, Curse the Gods. Those are the 2 I would recommend from Destruction.
Killer. And I loved Invincible Force. I'm looking at the track listing, or Tormentor and Death Trap and Bestial Invasion. Killer.
Bestial Invasion, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I got to bring up one. There's a couple we haven't touched on. There's a couple that are required. We must talk about before.
Well, there's a couple that we said that we were going to talk about that were not part of these big names. We said the other bands that we said should be in the other big four, right? And then we just put in the other two big Germans. Plus, we mentioned Death Angel and a couple other bands. So, who's one of the ones that you were going to mention? I know you're a big fan of them. You haven't talked about them yet.
All right, you're leading me there. So I'm not going to say who's on my brain. There's a certain band from South America we need to talk about before we're done. But I'll first talk about.
Okay, that's right. The way they started out. Yes, go ahead.
I'll first talk about Nuclear Assault. And actually, I mentioned them while you were away.
Okay.
Who the perfect example, as I said while you were away, the perfect example of just boneheaded, stupid, right next to really intelligent and wise and very canny, intelligent stuff. The Plague, very socially aware, very good stuff. And of course, another song that I feel like if I had to define thrash in one song would be Critical Mass. Just the riff, the drums, the guitars, the vocals. John Connolly's vocals.
The Plague was an EP, by the way. That was the one that came after Game Over. I'm just looking at their albums right now.
Right. But I mean, the song "The Plague" is the one. What I meant. Yeah, it's on the EP. The Plague is a brilliant song. It's a little bit lighter, but it's still heavy.
Very cool album cover too. I like the album cover too.
The Handle with Care album is really a must, and it's that's their pinnacle. F sharp.
I like Survive too. I always like Survive.
Justice is another great one. F sharp, and Nuclear Assault was probably a little bit closer to punk, which brings up another band who we can't leave before we mention. But I'll shut up about Nuclear Assault. Go check them out. Great band. Dan Looker again. Great band. But
who was the other one? The other band, the one from South America, then?
I don't know if you had. I didn't want to shut you up if you had more to say about.
No, go ahead. I wanted you to mention yours because you talked about them, so that's why I wanted to bring them up.
Well, this is a band. Of course, it's Sepultura. Of course, Max Cavalera is one of the great metal riff writers and vocalists and songwriters of all time. I mean, he's one of the legends, and I've never met him, but he apparently lives right here in Phoenix. But great.
When they were in that groove, though, in that era, I would say
you cannot go wrong with Beneath the Remains, with Arise, or my personal favorite, Chaos AD. And Rich and I disagree about Roots, but I think Roots is an excellent album. My young daughter.
That was their changing point. That's what they changed.
My young daughter, because of me, cannot walk by a tree without saying Roots, which I'm very proud dad moment.
That's hysterical.
Yeah. So Roots, I love that song. It was featuring Mike Patton, by the way, as a guest screamer. It's just as a quick touch about Sepultura. Obviously, most Sepultura and thrash fans know they parted ways with Max Cavalera. They went on with a guy named Derek Green, who's a very good frontman. He's the music is and Andreas Kisser is basically the guy who kept Sepultura going. It's controversial. We're not going to get into what all that stuff, but I will say that their Ludwig van, or the Alex album with Derek Green, is very good. It's a tribute to A Clockwork Orange, and it's a kind of a return a little bit to the old days. And they do a Beethoven medley, a thrash Beethoven medley, which is very good. But also the song
that's from 2009.
Oh wow, it's that long ago.
So between that and Chaos AD, which would be their last, I guess, more of a classic album, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 albums before you get to Alex.
Okay. And Roots is still Cavalera, Sepultura. Whatever Rich says, it's still.
I'm still standing behind Beneath the Remains and Arise. Love them. Definitely two great thrash albums from the 80s. That's from, Beneath the Remains is 89, and then Arise was 91.
I see the world old. I see the world dead. That's great stuff. And then Dead Embryonic Cells is, people don't like the song title.
But we're getting out of the 80s now. That's 91.
All right. I'm not going to obey your rules there, Catino.
But if you go back to Beneath the Remains, you got Inner Self and Stronger Than Hate and Mass Hypnosis and Lobotomy and Hungry. The grooves on that album are incredible, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, great riff writer. Great songs. I mean, and there was always they incorporated a lot more later in their career, but there was always the Latin kind of touch to them always. But yeah, there was more as they embraced some of the drumming, especially on KSAD.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say for you kids out there, Territory is probably the ultimate Sepultura song. It's just so heavy, so brutal, so brutal, so heavy.
You lost me by then.
Actually, that's 90s.
What album is Territory from? Roots?
That's on KSAD.
KSAD. All right. So KSAD, I was half in and half out the door at that point.
Oh, I love KSAD. It's just perfection.
That's 93. Yeah. So I was in and half out at that point.
I got to bring up one more, and then Rich, I know you've got more. I know we're running out of time, but we can't not talk about probably, in my view, the best punk to thrash crossover that ever existed is Suicidal Tendencies.
They were interesting. They were definitely unique amongst everybody else.
Interesting. Tell us more, Rich.
Well, they were just unique, I think. They had that thrash feel and the grooves to them and the fun to it, but it was kind of like it was that skater crossover thing, the way they created their riffs and their rhythms, right? And what's his name, the singer?
Mike Muir.
Mike Muir, his delivery too was a little different. Wasn't as much. It was singing. There was a lot of singing. Like how can I? What was it? How can I laugh tomorrow?
How Will I Laugh Tomorrow? Yeah, that album is
a lot of singing. A lot of singing, but there was a lot of almost like speaking delivery in a lot of the words that they did too.
Yeah,
right.
You Can't Bring Me Down is a great thrash song. Sickest pit I've ever been in was to that song, and that is a great thrash song. And the How Will I Laugh Tomorrow album is straight up thrash. It is not anything else. It's not
very.
Punk,
I like it when they got very melodic into it. It's very cool.
Right. A Trip of the Brain, and actually, Pledge Your Allegiance is an anthem. That gets your fist in the air. And Join the Army was when they started to alter. But I mean, I do like their punk album. I like Institutionalized. Of course, everybody knows. I don't have a Pepsi.
Yeah, that was the first one. What was the first one called?
The first one was just called Suicidal Tendencies.
That's when they're hanging upside down from the baseball cage. I think it is. Is that what they're hanging from?
Yeah, on the playground. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great cover.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, and then I'll be honest, I kind of lost touch with them after Lights Camera Revolution, which was the You Can't Bring Me Down and Send Me Your Money. But I got to say, it's Rocky George. What a great guitar player. Great stuff. So Suicidal, that's and there's still a lot more. But Rich, you go ahead and I don't know, and we're nearing the end, but throw out a couple more that people should.
We're getting there, but the other two that I pulled out from my collection was Violence, Eternal Nightmare, and that band we've mentioned before, Atrophy. I don't have the second one on me, but the second one is my favorite.
That's the one with beer bong.
This is the first one. Second one is Violent by Nature. I mean, they have a song on there called Puppies and Friends. But it's a great song. What a great thrash tune that is. These guys were cool. And they're back together too. They're back in action as well.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, that's cool.
And so is Violence, and so is Evildead. But those bands, they came unfortunately at the tail end of the whole thrash movement. It was the very late 80s, early 90s. So a lot of these bands, well, most of them had like 2 albums out, and then they went away for a little while.
Right. Well, hey, you out there, go check out United States of Anarchy, the Evildead album. I'm not just saying that because we had them on; they were good guys, but it's a good album.
Yeah.
But right, and also, like you said, I guess my final comment, then I'm going to shut up and let Rich take us out. Is I think thrash is alive and well. I mean, maybe all the stuff we said is old. All of our favorites we've said are at least 25 years old. But the Dust Bowl album is one of my tops of the decade. They're a excellent thrash fan. They make me really excited about where thrash is going. And as I said, Hellstar, it's good to have Hellstar back. And in 2021, early 2021, we're supposed to be getting a new Overkill album. So we're going to be getting a lot of good stuff from thrash legends.
Talking about the new wave of thrash, because you mentioned Dust Bowl, you still have. I'm looking at a bunch of names here. You got Hatchet, got Hatchet. You got Gamma Bomb, Warbringer, Municipal Waste.
Municipal Waste. They're connected to Nuclear Assault. They have a connection there.
Yeah. I mentioned Havoc. Who else am I mentioned? Missing Jack. There's so many bands. Fueled by Fire, but I don't know if they're still around. Bonded by Blood, another one.
Right. Well, we mentioned one that Rich and I really geeked out about was Evil Invaders. They better have. Yes. They better keep going because they're
still active. Suicidal Angels. Suicidal Angels are very good. They're like 80s Slayer. If you like that, of course, everybody likes 80s Slayer. So check out Suicidal Angels. That's another one. I'm looking at a whole bunch of logos here. There's probably like two dozen of that new wave of classic thrash bands that are out there.
And then was it? See, unfortunately, these albums came out at the same time, so my brain is putting them together. But was it White Wizard? Is a little bit more traditional, but they're
more traditional. Yeah, they're like that new wave of traditional heavy metal.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna argue the point a tiny bit, just a tiny bit, because I felt like they remind me of Painkiller Priest, which that's when I felt like Priest were Judas Priest, of course, were dabbling in thrash a little bit.
Speed metal. Yeah, speed metal, definitely. Painkiller. Yeah.
And I'm taking a quick look, so we are leaving people out. I know we are. So hey, if you got them,
I'm doing a little research as we're talking. If I could find a couple more names, because if you go to YouTube, there's a couple of really cool pages like the New Wave of Old School Thrash, and they always post up new bands that are on there.
Cool. Yeah. Well, and there were a bunch of bands that lived in the same neighborhood on the same street that we didn't mention, which are, who I would not call them thrash, but could tour on a thrash bill, which would be Pantera, could tour with any thrash band and hold their own with any thrash band.
Cowboys from Hell is a thrash album.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's doesn't matter what you call it. It kind of goes in and out of thrash, but yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, they could tour with any thrash band. And same, Nevermore could tour with any thrash band, even though I don't consider Nevermore thrash. Arch Enemy could tour with any thrash band.
Yeah, they're thrash. Yeah, they're more, they're melodic. They call them melodic death metal, but it's thrash. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. All right. Well, cool. I think we're down to
That's
one.
A lot of information.
Gotta say thanks to our viewers, especially Lisa Ann Albano came in with a whole shitload of comments and reviews. So thank you very much. And hopefully we touched on everybody. Well, we didn't touch on everybody, so I'm not going to say that. But thank you, Rich, for
a lot. We mentioned so many bands, and we mentioned all the big names, the heavy hitters, the second tiers, the third tiers, the German, right? So I think we covered a lot of ground.
We did, and we apologize if we left out your favorite, but drop a comment. This will be on Facebook, and it'll exist on YouTube eventually too. Yeah, thrash is great. Don't hear. I don't know. You got to give it a chance. Don't dismiss thrash because it's too heavy or too noisy. And remember, Metallica started as thrash. Slayer never stopped being thrash. Megadeth are still a thrash band, even though they've experimented. Anthrax, even though with all their experimentation, were always thrash, and it's great. And some of the best music of all time.
And Overkill and Testament and Exodus and Destruction and Sodom, everybody's still making new records.
Yeah. Yes. Like I said, Rich and I can't say enough good things about Overkill. Just one of our
Flotsam and Jetsam. The last two Flotsam and Jetsams are as good as Doomsday for the Deceiver and No Place for Disgrace.
Yeah, and we can't leave out Arizona's finest. Arizona's proudest.
Love New Flotsam.
So yeah, keep it coming with thrash. It's great stuff. And Rich, this was fun. We should do this again. We have some good guests in the pipeline, but Rich and I will do this again sometime.
Yep, we will.
All right.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right, we'll fizzle out. All right, keep it thrashy. See ya.
Yep.
ending broadcast.